Welcome, Don Hertzfeldt.
Hi. Oh man. Thanks. That's like, it's like blood to a vampire right now. I really, you're a sight for sore eyes. It's been a really long time, and I know it's no small thing to put yourselves together, buy a ticket, leave your homes, come to the theater, get a seat, and listen to an animator talk. And not just that, you're going to be hearing an unprepared animator talk, because this is a movie I've never spoken about before. You're the first audience anywhere ever in the world to see it. I took some notes to show how unprepared I am. Oh yeah, it's my understanding that some of y'all flew out here to be here at this screening, got on a plane, and I'm really happy to finally just let the cat out of the bag and let you know what actually this project is. It's a brand new 1-minute short film, and then we'll all be out of here. I don't know why they made like a big deal out of it. It's just like, even though it's a minute long, I'm told it goes by really fast. Like it's like 10 seconds. It's the editing. Thanks also to Holly and Lars and all of the amazing people who work here in the projection booth out front for making this all possible and having me. It's an honor to be here. So I have, well, if you're anything like me, you get really annoyed when you go to the movies and somebody gets up and just talks for a long time, like before the movie, and I'm gonna do just that. You don't need to know this story, but I think it's interesting to know going in how this was made. And every movie needs to stand on its own two legs, and it can, but we're all film aficionados, and I just think there's an extra dimension of interesting if you know what happened. And I'm going to be pacing, and I hope that doesn't make you uncomfortable. It's going to be kind of like this. If you don't know who I am, I work alone. I animate this stuff by myself, and it takes a very long time. And my last project was in 2020. It was called World of Tomorrow, Episode 3, and more blood, more blood. And I thought that would be the last one I make by myself for a while. I've been developing larger projects with just more money, with a crew. It's going to be something new, just to get some other people in the room and collaborate. And so that was sort of what I was thinking. And then I got a call from a band, and it was a band I liked very much. And they said, we got a new record coming out, and do you want to come listen to some demos and just see if there's like a vibe to just maybe do something? So I did, and I liked the music a lot. I liked them a lot. And they said I could just do whatever I wanted, which is, I like to hear that. And nobody wanted a music video. Like that was right out. But I thought, maybe, I can take maybe 25 minutes worth of this record and do something with it. And I thought it might be interesting to tell a story through picture, just respect the music. And what if it was told with no dialogue? no sound effects. Just take this music, you know, the length is already there for me, and the beats are already in there, which is, you know, that's an interesting challenge, you know, to edit to these pre-existing rhythms. And the only thing we talked about creatively was, you know, we're sort of from the same generation, growing up in the 80s, and just missing the time before the internet when you were in junior high school, and in order to discover something cool, you had to have an older sibling, right? Or there was a VHS tape of The Wall floating around your junior high school that was sort of legendary. And that sort of spirit of discovering something when underground was actually very underground. So I took this music and I went away and I started writing and thinking. And I started thinking also about my favorite songs in life, and just how so many of these songs I grew up with, I've been listening to them for 30 years, but it's weird that I cannot tell you what the song is actually about. Unless it's a very literal song, like I Want to Hold Your Hand. So many of our favorite songs are, they're like a good poem. They're very sort of ephemeral. They paint a scene, they conjure up a memory, but you cannot really hold them. And maybe that's why we want to play this song over again. And I thought, well, how do you get that feeling in a picture? You know, how do you get that sort of, you know, that sort of feeling of a magical song that you can't quite put your finger on? And that sort of turned the writing a little more into a fable. So I wonder if you guys can see where this is going yet. This is so fun for me because you have no idea what the fuck we're going to do right now. About a year passes and the project is, it's pretty much there. There's some scenes missing, there's some visual effects missing, but it's solid, it's in place. And then I got a call that the band had a controversy. And the fallout from this threatened to turn the project into collateral damage. And so I went through a sort of a grieving, denial, depression process, but I ultimately came to the very difficult decision of having to remove all of their music from the project. And I found myself in a very unenviable position of having completed a musical that no longer had any music in it. For those of you not in the film industry, if you want to make a musical, get the music that you're gonna use in the musical in the beginning of production. Don't make the musical silent and then think, what music should we put in the musical? So I spent another year deconstructing the whole thing. I handpicked music, all new music to put in there. I cut out several minutes. I put other stuff in. And I don't tell you this story to make you feel sorry for the movie, or I don't want this to, you know, the narrative here to be tragic, because the movie is better. If you make me spend an extra year on something, I'm gonna make it better. And to me, this today feels like a movie that was made by accident. Like I was crossing the street and I got hit by a car and this movie flew out of me. And even I'm just like, what is this thing? It's not a movie I was going to make at all before the band called me up. And then when they were out of the picture, it's not the movie I thought it was going to end up being. And so we're gonna show it to you. and then we're going to talk about it, and then I have something else to show you after that. I think that covers everything. Last but not least, it's very easy to worry about the past. It's very easy to worry about the future. It's difficult to be present. It's very difficult sometimes to be here now. And I just wanted to take a second and invite you all to take a breath, close your eyes if you have to, feel the weight of your bodies in the chairs, and let's be here now. It's right now. We're all here together. It's pretty great. And this is a movie I made called Me. Mike Judge! Mike fucking Judge!
Don fucking Hertzfeldt. Oh my God. That was amazing, incredible, in my opinion. I hope you all liked it.
I still feel like I'm covered with afterbirth. So it's just if I'm a little bedazzled, I'm not quite ready for this. But sorry.
Boy, I don't know where to begin. This is the second time I've seen it. It's even better. Wow. I guess I'll just start at the beginning of the movie. I don't know. In no order of importance.
I'm so glad you're doing this.
But I know, like, music, you've said in the past, like, music inspires, like a lot of your films. You can tell. It's interesting that I can't imagine what you started with, but I can't imagine it being any better than that. But that first song, is it like, can you tell me about?
Yeah, the drums.
It's amazing.
When I was floundering with a silent film, I just started thinking, this needs drums. I just want drums, especially in the middle where it's just building and building. But there's so many. If you just hear drum solos, they get really old fast.
Yeah.
And my mind kept going back to this drum track that I heard 30 years ago. When I was like 16, I bought like every movie soundtrack. I was a big movie nerd. And the soundtrack to JFK, it's a John Williams soundtrack, but there's a track on there that's called Ode to Buckwheat, which is just these amazing drums that they're melodic drums. They don't get too stale, and there's something to that. And at the time, I thought, is there nothing John Williams can't do? And then I realized it's by this guy, Brent Lewis. And when I was thinking about drums for this, my mind went back to that track, and I then assumed it was a track from the 60s, because I thought it was period JFK music. And then I looked into it deeper, and no, it was from the 90s, and the guy is still around. And so I got in touch with him, and I found 2 tracks. These 2 tracks come from one album that he put out called Drum Sex.
He was trying to sell some albums.
If you're going to make a record that's just drums, my friends, is there a better title than Drum Sex? So I called him up, and we just hit it off, and he's in his 80s now. He's living out in Joshua Tree. He wanted me to refer to him as the Drum Wizard. And there you go. But he's a legend. So I don't know much about percussion, but it's my understanding he's got like 30 bongos. I think they're bongos in front of him that are all tuned, so he can play them like a keyboard, I suppose.
Yeah, it sounds like tuned. I mean, it sounds melodic, like a lot of yeah. Wait, he lives in Joshua Tree, like.
Yeah, and he teaches drums to children, and you can see him like volunteering his time with the kit they're playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and stuff. He's a sweetheart. So I got really lucky with that because also he owns his own stuff like I do, and so he's his own label, and
You
so
don't
I
have
was
to
able
deal
to
with- yeah.
yeah, I was able to license directly through Brent. Yeah.
Has he seen it?
He has. He just sent me like in all caps, like so cool. So
Oh, nice.
I'll take it.
So so you said there was the year before the controversy happened, you were pretty far along, and then what was the second year? Like, what percentages would you, I mean, if you had to guess, like
It was like 80 to 90%
Okay.
done, and it's still. I like. There's something. It still feels haunted by the music that's not there, which I like a lot. For instance, when you see, especially early on, there's these big black ink splots flying around the screen. Those used to all be synced up to drums. And when I took that out, don't go because it's not. This is not why. When I removed it, it was just seeing those go by without any drums, without any reference. To me, was more interesting. I was like, whoa, and it feels, like it's reacting to something that's no longer there, and it felt so much better to me. And I of course, I can't divulge the name of the band. If anyone knows, if there's a lawyer who knows anything about NDAs, like, is it violating the NDA if I talk about it on stage in public with a microphone? Is that bad? I don't know.
Lawyers in the audience?
Yeah, it was Alvin and the Chipmunks, you guys. It was, Alvin's been drinking. He was on a podcast. He said some horrible things about immigrants, and I just couldn't continue working with him.
I knew it.
He always had that little red hat, So,
Yeah.
can you do an Alvin voice? Can you do an?
I cannot do an Alvin voice.
Can you do Beavis doing an Alvin voice? Is that?
Yeah. No, that was horrible. So you were. So this was. Let's talk about Alvin and the Chipmunks for a while.
I'm fine with not talking about this movie at all, to be honest. But please.
Well, before Alvin got canceled, you were making there's lip sync in there. So like the second, I can't imagine that song happened to be the same as an opera singer.
Yeah, no. So that was the only piece that had been fully lip synced to a previous song. And so I had to redo all of that performance, the lip sync, and find obviously a new piece of music that would fit there. And I obviously the movie takes a very sharp turn at that moment, and we're just like, what is happening right now? And what came to mind at that point during this entire rescue operation, the first thing that came to my mind was Klaus Nomi. And for anyone who doesn't know who Klaus Nomi was, he was a performer in the 70s in New York City who he had this act where during a variety show where nobody knew what was going to happen, the curtains would part, there'd be like strobe lights, very loud thunder and lightning, smoke, and he'd just sort of glide forward in like a kind of this giant Mars Attacks kind of cloak with sparkles and a bodysuit. And he had like kind of a severe receding hairline that he emphasized with spikes in his hair and like very white, almost pancake makeup. And he moved like a robot. And so this New York audience would inevitably jeer and heckle him and catcall him. And then this music would start to play, and he'd start singing this beautiful aria. And then you'd think, okay, he's lip syncing. And then you're like, wait a minute. He's actually trained his voice to reach this beautiful soprano range. And he's just singing this beautiful thing as this creature from another place that just appears. And by the end of this piece, this New York audience is just spellbound, and he just glides back into the smoke, and the curtains close, and it was like this beautiful, strange creature, you know, just delivering this thing. And so that was the first thing I thought of, where where you just see it's got to be opera. You've just got to have this, but a little over the top vibe. And Joan Sutherland is an Australian opera star. She's like not just over the top, but she's got like her own top, I feel like. And this hearing that just always gives me like shivers. It's such an incredible piece. And so I was very lucky to be able to get that one too, because so much of this is, there's ideal music you can put in, but you have to be able to get it. You know, it's like you have to be able to license it and work all that out. And so there are some minor miracles in that department too.
Was there anything that you were animating to after Alvin and the Chipmunks that then you couldn't get again?
There were some pieces I wanted, and I just knew it was impossible, so I didn't really pursue it very strongly. And I didn't want to get too contemporary either, because, you know, then it's going to date the piece. And if Alvin and the Chipmunks weren't involved anymore, you know, then, you know, I don't need a modern track. I don't need a current, you know, record. Yeah. It could be a little more timeless, I think.
It's always one of the biggest heartbreaks to me in filmmaking, when you're just making something to a song, and then the last minute someone says, "Yeah, we can't get it." And I'm glad that didn't happen. Well, it happened once. And then you worked another year. And then, no, but it's brilliant. I also, it occurred to me, just like, I don't know, there's a certain power to a silent film that, like, you don't see them too often. And I'm curious, like, are you a big fan of the silent film era, or certain any particular ones? Or?
Oh yeah, I mean, Buster Keaton blew my mind when I was in film school, and Chaplin, of course. And I also think, like, subconsciously, I wound up stealing so much in my early films from those guys, because, you know, you and I both started out working with these giant, stupid downshooter cameras, these big, these massive rigs that you can't move them. And so many of my early films, shooting on these rigs, you know, I'd animate everything myself, and then I'd shoot everything myself. And to put a camera move in there, it's all this math.
Yeah.
You know, there's these little hand cranks. You gotta do incremental frame by frame, and if you want to zoom in, that's incremental. And so I think, in a weird way, so many of my early films feel like silent films.
Yeah.
Anyway, because they're very much like someone just put a camera there and just let it run, and things happen in front of it. And it took me a long time to kind of break out of that habit visually. But this was a little different. This was, you know, I just wanted to, I love sound design. Like, I think if I was not doing this, I'd be a sound designer. I'm so into sound, and this was kind of a challenge to not give me that tool at all. And just kind of get back to, you know, visual storytelling, and what is that like?
Yeah, in case you don't know, Don, I think you were the last person to shoot, independent animator to shoot something on film. Oh. I mean, by a mile, I think. Well, I didn't, like, and now you started in your first film out of film school, became, well, what, in 95, was it? Like, went viral for 95. Like, I remember seeing it. And then the next one also. So you kind of never, you have a interesting career in that you just never stopped. You've never, like.
I'm still a little viral for 95.
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, it's like, there's something there, but it's 95.
When was your first one to not use the old Oxberry? These cameras, they look like tanks, because they couldn't, you're moving them like 1 millimeter, and if it shakes, it messes up the whole thing. And
yeah,
like, when was the last time you used that?
2011.
Yeah, you're the last guy to
I
use
finished 2012. I was finished. That's when I moved here. I moved to Austin in 2010, And at the time I was finishing shooting It's Such a Beautiful Day in Santa Barbara. And there's something about being in production that is just, it's like being in love. It's just like the greatest energy because nothing else matters. And I needed to finish shooting this movie, and so I trucked this 800-pound camera across the country. It wouldn't fit in any door in my house, so we cut a hole through the house to put the camera inside because I needed to get a shot. I needed to finish the movie, and you will do anything to, get a shot and finish the movie. And that's just, there's something very addictive about that constant feeling of making things. But yeah, that was the last one. So I still have these 2 giant animation cameras in my home, and if I ever move out of there, in the real estate listing, it may say, "Animation cameras convey." But in 2014, I started work on World of Tomorrow, and that was the last. I haven't touched the cameras since.
And from what you told me, I think. Because this looks like nothing I've ever seen. So did World of Tomorrow. Also, sounds like you do it your own kind of way, also, right? So it's it's sort of adapted from the traditional way you're doing it, right? You Photoshop, and I don't know if anyone.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I'm doing it right either. That's the secret is nobody knows what they're doing, and in a good way. When I was shooting on film, and just starting out. There were very few American animators doing this at all, especially independently. There was Bill Plimpton, who I sort of followed. I kind of followed him in a financial sense, just like how much should a movie cost? How much should I spend on this and that? And then you were shortly after Bill. I think in the early '90s, you were doing your thing, independently and an American. But I from talking to everybody over the years, there's never been one guy to follow. There's not one career path or even one technical path to follow because we're all just sort of figuring this out. I'm still sort of I'm animating on Photoshop. I'm editing in Final Cut. But I don't know what half of those buttons do. I just know what I need to know and then when I speak to other guys, they're like, yeah, I don't know. I just learned something new, and it would have saved me like a month. But it's,
Yeah.
And then in other ways, every production, you're also learning in just other avenues, creatively. New tricks. Oh, you didn't get this quite right, but maybe in the next movie, you know a little better. And that's also kind of addictive too, because you never stop learning. Photoshop.
Yeah. Should we? Does anyone in the audience want to take a couple questions, or how much? How are we? I guess you could raise your hand and.
I don't have my glasses on to make you all less terrifying, so I actually can't see anybody. If you want to.
There's a question. Right, yeah. Do you,
I had a question because I'm just curious about how each of y'all's processes works in regard to this. I know when I, as a musician, have an idea, I can just improvise it, record it, and I'm done. But with animation being so involved and time-consuming, when you have that, creative impetus, how do you go about chasing it and making sure you don't lose it as you're trying to?
that's a good question. Yeah. He's asking if you get a burst of an idea, because animation takes forever.
Yeah. Well, you want to both?
Well, I would just say real quick, when I was starting out, I was always trying to find that, because you'll forget, you'll go oh, this sucks, but you have to just remind yourself, oh, I did really like this idea at one point. Even though I'm drawing it frame by frame and I have exposure sheets and it takes forever, it's just okay, I know it worked at one point in my head. I don't know about you.
Yeah, there's a point at the end of every production, whether you're a student or a professional, where you have a rough cut, which is the very first time you've seen what you've done. And in every production, you think, oh God, what have I done? It's the worst the project will ever be, and then you spend the rest of post-production repairing it and trying to salvage and redeem yourself. And it gets a little better with experience, and like Mike said, you remember the original idea, and you also, I try to remember back to just past productions where it's just I've been through this before. every production is bumper cars. Things are gonna go wrong. And every film production, live action or animation, you are solving problems most of the time. And I have to just remember that I will not let this suck. I know me. I know I will. I don't know the answer today, but I know I will figure this out because I've done this before, and then that keeps me confident. But to what you were saying about getting the idea and how do you keep it alive, because animation can also be the least spontaneous way to make a movie. I am lucky by working alone in that respect, because I can get an idea and just start making it that weekend. And that is a luxury that's kind of rare for a lot of these productions. I've only done 3 things, well, 2. This was a commission, but it didn't happen. But I've only done 2 other things that I don't own. But even then, they know to leave me alone, and I work on it like any other independent thing. But how, in a larger project, how do you guys keep that spark going, especially with other people involved?
I mean, I guess it's sort of the same, but yeah, I mean, when you go to live action, it's like, I don't know, yeah, you try to remember. It's sort of the same, but then it just gets more annoying and makes you wish you were working by yourself. But I'd say it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like you keep reminding yourself, okay, there was something here. You just keep going back to it.
This was good once. This
Yeah,
was good
yeah.
once.
And even like if it's live action and you do a rehearsal or you shoot one wide shot and you remember it, like this was whatever, funny, interesting, really worked, and then you just keep going, like, okay, that you've watched several close-ups, and so you just go like, I gotta, whatever that was, you just try to, it worked for you once. And I mean, it's kind of the same thing, I guess, would be the answer.
And you got to expect everything to go wrong. It's just, and it's usually the youngest filmmaker who wrote 20 drafts of the screenplay who gets upset and throws tantrums when it's not exactly the way it was imagined, because they don't realize that once you start shooting, that's draft 1 of this. You're starting all over again, and this is an extreme example, but everything can go wrong. It will go wrong, and with experience, you just roll with every punch, and you never really stop writing.
Was the other thing you did as a commission, would that be The Simpsons?
I did a thing for The Simpsons, and I did a thing for Jennifer Lawrence. Just to drop some names. Yeah.
I don't know if I know about that one.
Yeah, she asked me to do she started her own production company. So she, when you go to the movies and there's like 1 million logos and things before the movie starts, she asked me to animate her logo and design her logo. It was odd because when I spoke to her on the phone, she also on the line was her friend, and she was just getting into telling me why she wanted to hire me. And she was very excited to tell me this story. But as she's telling me this story, her friend starts talking too, going, oh, yeah, blah, blah. And so they're talking over each other. So to this day, I don't know what she was talking about. Because I didn't want to say, I didn't hear the praise. Could you repeat how great I am? So I don't know why Jennifer Lawrence likes me. But
maybe we'll get to the bottom of it someday. Any over here?
So having followed your work and now seeing the latest piece, I just want to ask Don, how are you doing? How you feeling, man?
How am I doing? I'm okay. Last year was bad. I had a really bad year, and this was just this wasn't even the worst thing that happened last year. But I'm good. I try to be, honestly, I know, in regards to this, it's very easy to be mad about what happened. It's very easy to be depressed or bitter. But I still got to get up tomorrow morning, and I don't want to feel those things. And it's sort of like being mad at the weather because it was something that happened that was completely out of my control. I didn't ask Alvin to be on that podcast.
Oh, getting some clues.
It's not funny anymore, but yeah. But you know, I've just tried to be more mindful about everything, and I don't like. I'm still on good terms with the band. I don't bear ill will towards anybody, and I hope y'all don't either. You know, there's no villains necessarily in every story, but I'm still, you know, I'm very grateful that it happened, even though it was very strange and difficult because it just wouldn't have existed otherwise, and maybe there's no other way for it to have existed.
I'm glad it exists. Do you want? You mentioned something. Do you want to talk about the future project, or is that something you're able to talk about?
Yeah.
With what's going on?
Well, there's not much to talk about yet, but there's a feature film that's been developing for over 20 years. I guess you can't say it's developing anymore. That's a stretch, isn't it? It's been stagnating for 20 years. But it's finally moving forward more. So Ari Aster, the horror fella, is a friend, and he's very enthusiastic about coming on board as a producer. And so we're in the early stages of putting this feature film together, and it's you know, it's going to cost a lot of money and it's going to take a lot of time. So I'm not holding my breath, but you know, it's exciting for me to get, you know, some other people in the room and collaborate, which is something I've never really been able to do before. And I'm not like one of those animators who loves to sit down and draw forever. And like I know I enjoy the process because it's something to focus on, and a lot of my problems vanish when I'm you know, in that zone. But it would be nice to try something new. And Ari's a really amazing fella, and I'm really confident and optimistic.
That would be awesome. Yes. Okay, let's go further back. Yeah. Okay, with pointing your thumbs at yourself there. But, you.
So, from the perspective of just like one dude making a movie, what would you say is the most challenging aspect from gathering funding, writing Murphy's Law during production, distribution, anything? What would you say has been the most challenging aspect?
Am I the one dude? I guess I would say seeing it through, you know, finishing, getting to the end of it, and it's something I've been thinking about lately. And it's similar also to where we were starting out in the 90s, how back then it was very difficult to make an animated short, to actually make it. You had to find one of these cameras, you had to buy all this film stock, you had to cut it on film, you had to wait for the film lab. And I feel like that acted like a great filter. Because if you didn't really want to make this movie and you didn't have the stamina to go through all of those technical hurdles, it weeded out a lot of people. And if you actually finished the project in the 90s, there were back then animation festivals theatrically, MTV would show your stuff, and it was relatively easy then to get it seen. You know, there was maybe 30 animated films made every year on film that
like
were
short film, yeah.
Yeah, that was, you know, remarkable, I'd say. And today, everything seems to have flipped. It's very easy to make something now. Everybody can make whatever with the software. It's all like miracles, what you got on your phone. But it's much harder to be noticed. It's much harder to, you know, break through, because everybody's making stuff, and it's you know, that filter's gone. And it's still a marathon, though. You know, it's still just finishing it. It's you know, getting up every day and focusing on this, and you know, there's sacrifices and everything, and it's all well and good. I just don't know if everyone's built for getting to the finish line, because it's even today it's still very demanding. I mean, this is 20-something minutes long, which, you know, it's a whole other thing. I don't know. Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah,
You
no,
could
I mean,
rescue me.
I think it's still pretty hard to, well, I mean, something like this. I mean, you know, it takes a certain kind of weirdo like us to
Yeah.
do this kind of stuff still. And, but yeah, that, I remember thinking, you know, I'm just going to work harder at this than everybody else. I'm not good at talking to people or going like, hey, watch my film. But if, you know, I think there's still a certain amount of build it and they will come to it if you make something really remarkable.
Yeah, to turn this into advice, I would say that the only thing that's really the same between when we started and today are the film festivals. The film festivals are still out there, and it's a very good way of getting publicity, getting noticed. You know, maybe a critic will say something, maybe you'll win an award, but also the people who program those festivals, they're all part of a, you know, they all know each other from other festivals, and they'll remember you for your next movie. And it's just a very good way of separating yourself from the YouTube pack and you know, not being, you know, the gray sludge of all the other stuff that's being made.
Should we do one more question? And okay, we'll do a couple more. Okay.
So she asked if I could sit here and watch all of my movies, which I would never, never do. Which piece would be my proudest? And I will say that I have had to sit through my movies in this room to QC these, and it's torture. Well, this is too new and traumatic for me to say. I need more separation from this to really like think about it. I think World of Tomorrow episode 3 is my favorite right now, only because I was very proud of just. We're gonna get into a whole can of worms with that one. But I was able to break a lot of mental hurdles with the way I directed it. I think it's my best directed movie. It might be the best sound design I've done. I'm going to make you answer the same question.
Oh, no, I don't know. I have no opinion on one. Okay, we got one more. I don't know. I'm just going to
I want to answer all of them like that. Wait a minute. I didn't know that was an option. I don't have an opinion on that one.
It's all opinions. Okay, let's go. Okay, we'll do two more. Let's go. You back there, glasses, sir. Yeah, that's you. Yes.
I wanted to ask about the relationship to the macabre in your films, Don. Watching all of them, I feel like there's always these elements of like body horror and body destruction, and it really freaks me out. Like a lot of the various characters that kind of destroy themselves over the course of this journey they go on, and obviously these elements of like technology and possible metaphors for the internet, you know, kind of Cronenberg-esque. There's also these comedy beats that are really like impactful, and you know, do you consider all your films to be horror films? Do you consider all of them comedies? So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that through line.
Did everybody hear that, more or less? You want to take this question? Well, it's interesting because I was when you were talking to Ari, who's a horror producer. We were talking about that script specifically, and I was like, yeah, I guess it can be considered a horror film. And then when I kind of stepped back, I was like, maybe everything I've done can be considered a horror film, you know, from a certain point of view. The only time I consciously thought about Cronenberg was the Simpsons thing that I did. Especially when Maggie turns like inside out and there's like a naked lunch sort of. is it a proboscis in it that a mosquito has? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's this thing that grows out, grows out of her. I don't know. You know, I grew up also reading Fangoria magazine, and that was really my entry into being interested in film production was through makeup effects, and then ILM and visual effects. And I really wanted to be Phil Tippett when I was really little, and I got to know Phil, and that's been amazing. But the, you know, visual effects especially has colored a lot of the way I approach shots, and I guess, you know, makeup effects and the Fangoria thing is still in there too.
Did you do flip books? You did flip book stuff when you were a kid much, or?
Not so much flip books, but I did. I showed you my camera. I have an old VHS. This was crazy. We both did the same thing. When we were you a teenager?
No, I was way too old. Like, I was already.
You're 33.
We discovered the same thing, which was that on some of these VHS cameras before, you know, so you didn't have to go pay to process film. If you hit stop and start really quick, it would do like 6 or 8 frames.
Right, but then that's obviously too slow to watch your pencil test. I was 15. Mike was 35.
Yeah. 29.
And we both came to the conclusion, you know, okay, this is too slow to watch it. So I hooked up a VCR to the VCR, and I dub it to a master tape while this tape was playing at 2 times speed, because fast forward was too fast. Yeah. And that would give you an idea of the timing and the speed of what you were animating.
I just know, like, doing flip books, when I had my pencil, and then I had a red pencil, and just a lot of just blood and stabbing. When you're like a 12-year-old, you're just like, oh, cool. Like I can make stuff move. I'm gonna have fires and stabbing people. And there's just something juvenile and fun about it.
If we were in middle school today, we'd probably be institutionalized. But when you're that age, you don't want to draw flowers blooming. You know, you want to draw exciting things blowing up, and you know it's little bits of motion that are the most exciting things to draw. And it's kind of reminding me in a weird way. So I would dub to a master VHS, so I'd have that in the correct speed, but then it would be silent.
All right.
And I would take an audio cable, and then I would dub in over that cartoon like Indiana Jones music or some soundtrack, and an eerie thing would happen. It would just sync. You know, it would just, for whatever reason, the brain wants to match. It's like the Wizard of Oz Pink Floyd thing.
Your brain wants to make it work, yeah.
Yeah, and so time and time again, I'd make a cartoon and then slop music over it, and it would just sort of magically look like I intended that to be there the whole time. And I was reminded of that so much in this production of being 15 and just, I wasn't slopping music over this, but it's just starting from scratch like that is very weird.
All right, I guess we'll do one. Okay, the woman back there. Yeah, you.
I'm curious about the title of the film. Does it speak to kind of the process of, you know, the commission and I got stripped away, this is all you, or are there any parts of the story that are loosely autobiographical that inspire the title?
No. I think that gives us time for one more. I don't mean to shut you down or anything, but it's just a shorter. Oh, the movie's about not me, but it's a collective me. The very early ideas were narcissism, but that's not interesting by itself. And I got more interested in the why of that. Like, why do we feel like we are retreating into ourselves? You know, why do we feel like we are retreating into a world of more and more mirrors instead of more and more interaction with other human beings? That was sort of the germ of it. So it's more of like a collective, like an ego me.
Okay, we got, what we already, okay, last one, there we go. Oh.
What do you do all day?
Oh, that was for me, you know.
Oh,
Oh, I'm a busy guy.
well, I do this. I do a little of this.
This takes a lot of time.
It does take a lot of time. Speaking to other animators like Mike and or guys like Phil, it makes us feel better about ourselves. But I think it's a common question too. Like, isn't this so boring? Isn't it so tedious? And I'm like a very. I inherited my mom's anxieties, I think, and it's not her fault. But I can go through states of, depression and this and that, and when I'm animating, it's all gone. It all goes away. And I've spoken to other animators who are just like, yeah, it's as if you have this thing to focus on, you're just happy and it's all gone. And so it's easy to make it sound like, oh, it takes so fucking long, and it's just and you can commiserate, but at the same time, there's a reason we're doing this. It's fun. It's actually rewarding, and I still feel like I'm learning. Even when something like this happens, it's still interesting. I'm never bored. I don't think I ever feel bored.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, when people will say, "Oh, animation, that's too tedious for me" or something, but I don't draw very well. You might have noticed, but like, to me, illustration is boring. Like, if it's gonna be moving, that's actually exciting. It sounds like a weird thing to say about doing drawings over and over again, but it actually is kind of exciting. It's like, oh, I'm just making something that's coming alive. It's like a really great feeling.
It never gets old.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and it's just never gets old. I still feel like I'm learning stuff. I still feel like I'm getting better, and it's and also it's I can do what I want. I can, and there seems to be people who want to see it, and so I feel very, very, very lucky. Does anyone have a question for Mike? It is an opportunity to.
Oh, this is the Don night. Okay, well, last one then, Hollywood. Okay, so we'll be quick. Okay, go ahead.
So a funny one for Mike. The other day I watched Jackass 3. And
Oh.
it starts with the 3D opening with Beavis
Yeah.
Butthead. Is that a reference to
Oh, that's right.
the animation?
I kind of borrowed from our Don thing. Yeah, I might have stolen a joke there, but that was very.
In the third dimension, that's what it was.
Yeah, it kind of sucked though, because then when the movie came out, there's a 3D warning or explanation in front of the Beavis and Butthead one, so it's like, well, they didn't tell me they were going to do that. But yeah, well, I'm in Jackass 3. Yeah.
All right. So we've got something else to show you, and it is a movie I made a great long time ago now called "It's Such a Beautiful Day." This is a new remastered theatrical DCP. I think a little later in the year we're going to re-release it nationwide with me attached. And it's a movie that the original theatrical release of it, it was completely abbreviated, and I screwed it up, and it was completely my fault. So it never really had a proper theatrical release. And if you've ever seen the movie, I can almost guarantee you've not seen it in a theater. And if you have seen it, you've only seen it through word of mouth because it never had a publicist or anything like that. And it's a movie that was experimental in every sense of the word. The writing was experimental, the sound design was experimental, the photography on these cameras was experimental. It was all composited. Everything you see on the screen went through the lens of these old antique cameras. And with anything experimental, sometimes experiments fail. And watching it now, I can see a steady progression of the film getting better. It was originally released as 3 short films over the course of 6 years. And you can kind of get a sense of I'm getting my legs under me with this camera, with these optical effects I'm doing as the movie goes along. And so we've had to watch it in this theater, and it's hard for me because, like almost everything I've made, you know, you still just see the flaws. You still just see, I really wish I cut all of this out. I really wish I had done this better. I wish I got these colors better. I wish this didn't happen. You know, it's imperfect. But then I've heard from so many people over the years writing me letters, emailing me, saying how much the movie has helped them. And I'm always hit in the face and given whiplash when I remember that, yeah, maybe perfect isn't the goal here. You tend to see the movie like this when you're the director and you're only hunting for the flaws and you're just staring at pixels towards the end of it. And so this is It's Such a Beautiful Day. It's an imperfect movie made by an imperfect person. But before we say goodbye, can we just hear it for Mr. Mike Judge? I mean,
Thank you.
thank you so much for doing this. I think Austin is very happy to have you back. And thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. It really means a lot to me. And I hope you have a good experience with It's Such a Beautiful Day. Thanks, guys.